There's a moment when everything looks fine on the outside, but your spirit starts to feel the tension. You can't explain it. You can't point to a specific text or a sentence or even an obvious offense, but something feels off. That's not paranoia. That's discernment. That's God whispering, pay attention. There's more going on here than meets the eye. Because when a narcissist tries to destroy you, the first weapon they use is deception. They don't come at you with a sword. They come at you with a smile. But just because it's dressed in charm doesn't mean it's not dangerous. And God knows that. That's why the first thing he does is expose what's hiding beneath the surface. You might feel like you've been gaslit, manipulated, twisted into knots trying to explain yourself. You tried to be the peacemaker, the understanding one, the mature one. You give grace, you give benefit of the doubt, but something still doesn't add up. That's when God steps in. Not always with thunder, not always with fire, but often with clarity. Little moments. A sentence they say that doesn't sit right, a contradiction, a conversation you overhear. And suddenly, it's like the fog starts to lift. Not all at once, but slowly, deliberately. God will not leave you blind. Sometimes exposure doesn't look like a dramatic revelation. Sometimes it looks like an unraveling. What they used to cover themselves starts falling apart. The lies they told can't be maintained. Their narrative starts to crack. And at first you question yourself, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'm the problem. But then the patterns become undeniable. God starts connecting dots you didn't even know were there. People you haven't talked to in months reach out and confirm what you felt. You open your Bible and see something that hits too close to home to be coincidence. You listen to a sermon and feel like it was written just for you. That's not random. That's revelation. That's God pulling back the curtain on what was designed to control you. And here's what you need to understand. God exposes not to embarrass, but to protect. He exposes not to shame someone, but to save you. You were never meant to live under emotional tyranny. You were never meant to be drained by someone who only shows up to take and manipulate. You were never created to be confused, anxious, constantly second-guessing your own reality. That is not the fruit of the Spirit. That is the fruit of control. And when God sees one of his children trapped under that kind of weight, he goes to work. Don't be surprised if the exposure makes things worse at first. When light hits darkness, darkness doesn't surrender quietly. The narcissist may turn the narrative against you. They may try to paint you as unstable, ungrateful, rebellious. But here's what God showed me. When you walk in truth, the truth doesn't need defending. It stands on its own. The people meant to see will see. The people assigned to your purpose won't be confused by the noise. God has a way of separating truth from lies in a way that time always reveals. You don't have to orchestrate your own vindication. You don't have to prove yourself. God is your defender, and his timing is perfect. So if you feel like you're surrounded by half-truths, by manipulation, by charm that feels more like control, don't panic. God sees what you can't. And he's not indifferent. He's not distant. He's not ignoring your tears or your confusion. He is already in the process of pulling back the layers, one lie at a time. And when God reveals, he does it in a way that not only sets you free, but keeps you free. Because exposure isn't just about what God is removing from your life. It's about what he's preparing to release into your life. When a narcissist tries to destroy you, they don't go for the obvious wounds. They go for the deep ones, the ones that make you question your value, the ones that shake your sense of worth. They chip away at your identity, one subtle comment at a time, one passive-aggressive jab, one backhanded compliment, one gaslit moment where you start to wonder, am I too much? Am I not enough? Am I the problem? That's not just psychological warfare, it's spiritual warfare. And that's why when a narcissist tries to destroy you, one of the first things God does is strengthen your identity. Because if you forget who you are, it's easy to believe what they say. But when you remember who you are in Him, their words lose their power. God doesn't just whisper affirmation, He rewrites the script. He goes into the places where the enemy tried to plant lies and replaces them with truth. You're not too emotional. You're not too sensitive. You're not too much. You're not broken. You're not a burden. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are chosen. You are called. You are loved. Not because of how well you perform or how much you please people, but because you belong to Him. That identity doesn't change when people misunderstand you. It doesn't change when people misuse you. And it doesn't collapse under the weight of manipulation. It stands even when everything else falls. God will take you through seasons that feel like loss, but they're really recovery. Because what you thought was you wasn't actually you. It was who you had to become to survive their control. It was the version of yourself that dimmed your light to keep their ego safe. The version that stayed silent so they wouldn't explode. The version that over-apologized to keep the peace. But God says, that's not the real you. I didn't create you to live shrinking. I created you to live shine. And so slowly but surely, He starts calling the real you back to the surface. Not the you they molded, but the you He formed. You might not feel strong while it's happening. You might feel like you're falling apart, but sometimes God has to let certain versions of you die so that the truth of who you are can finally live. That strength doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it comes with tears, with journaling at midnight, with walking away from conversations that make you doubt your own mind, with turning off your phone because you know one more text could pull you back into the cycle. And in those moments, God is closer than you feel. He's speaking through your silence. He's working through your boundaries. He's building muscle in your spirit, even when all you feel is the ache. And then one day you'll hear their voice and it won't shake you. You'll remember the lies, but they won't stick. You'll feel the old trigger, but it won't pull, because God has rebuilt what they tried to tear down, piece by piece, brick by brick, not just healing you, but revealing you, the you that can walk into rooms unapologetically, the you that doesn't need validation to know you're valuable, the you that knows peace isn't earned, it's inherited, the you that knows you don't have to compete, perform, or shrink to be accepted. You already are. The narcissist wanted you to think you were only as strong as their approval. But God reminds you, you're only as strong as your source. And your source is unshakable. Your source is eternal. Your source doesn't change based on mood, opinion, or manipulation. So when the enemy tries to attack your identity, don't panic. That's just a sign that your identity is dangerous to his agenda. And that's why God's strengthening it, anchoring it, and making it unbreakable. Not just for this moment, but for everything He's preparing you to walk into. There are moments in your life when people walk away and it feels like your whole world is unraveling. The phone goes silent. The support system crumbles. The people you trusted the most start to shift. And you're left standing in the wreckage of something you thought would last forever. When a narcissist walks out or gets removed from your life, it doesn't always feel like deliverance. It feels like devastation. But what if God isn't punishing you? What if He's protecting you? What if the separation isn't rejection, it's elevation? Because sometimes God has to clear the room to raise the roof. We don't like separation. We're wired for connection. We want harmony. We want peace. We want things to make sense. So when someone who once held your hand now turns and throws stones, it confuses you. It breaks you. But God is not confused. He sees what you can't. He sees the manipulation you normalized. He sees the control you tolerated. He sees the potential in you. They were trying to suppress. And because He loves you, He won't let you stay small just to keep someone else comfortable. Sometimes the people you thought were your covering turn out to be your ceiling. And God will tear the ceiling off so you can breathe again. There are seasons where God removes people not because they were never meant to be part of your story, but because they can't go where you're going next. They were part of your survival, but not your success. They were part of your formation, but not your future. God knows the weight you're about to carry. He knows the places He's calling you to step into. And He knows that some attachments will choke your growth. So He severs what you were scared to let go of. And yes, it hurts. Yes, it feels like loss. But God isn't in the business of subtraction. He's in the business of multiplication. And sometimes addition starts with removal. The narcissist made it feel like you needed them, like your worth was attached to their approval, like your voice only mattered when it echoed theirs. So when God separates you, it's not just about physical distance. It's about spiritual alignment. He's pulling you back into sync with who He created you to be. And that can't happen when you're constantly shape-shifting to fit inside someone else's shadow. God will isolate you to reveal you. He'll take you through lonely places, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because when the noise fades, your identity gets louder. When the distractions are gone, your direction gets clearer. And when the wrong voices are silenced, the voice of God becomes undeniable. You might be tempted to go back. You might feel like you're being too harsh, too dramatic, too unforgiving. But God didn't bring you this far to lose yourself again. He's not just trying to free you from a person. He's trying to elevate you to a purpose. There's a version of you that doesn't second guess every decision. There's a version of you that doesn't shrink to avoid conflict. There's a version of you that walks in peace, authority, and clarity. But that version can't emerge while you're still tethered to toxicity. And God knows that. So He cuts the cord, not to leave you alone, but to lift you higher. You won't always see it at first. You'll feel the loss before you feel the gain. You'll grieve what you thought was good before you recognize what was never God. But trust this, when God separates, He always elevates. He doesn't take away without intention. He doesn't pull you out without purpose. And while it may look like a breakup, a fallout, or betrayal, it might actually be a breakthrough in disguise, because some doors don't close to trap you, they close to launch you. And what feels like the end might just be the beginning of everything God was waiting to release in your life. There comes a point where you've done all you can. You've prayed, you've reasoned, you've apologized, you've tried to keep the peace. You've walked on eggshells, held your tongue, swallowed your truth just to avoid another explosion. And yet the conflict keeps coming. The manipulation doesn't stop. The narcissist keeps playing the victim while turning others against you. And at some point, your strength runs out. Your words don't work. Your logic doesn't land. Your heart feels tired. Your mind feels heavy. And you realize this battle is bigger than you. That's when God steps in. That's when heaven starts fighting on your behalf, because the battle might not be yours to win, but it is God's to finish. There are some fights that aren't physical. You can't touch them, but you feel them. They live in your home. They echo in your thoughts. They show up in conversations that leave you drained and disoriented. You start questioning your sanity. You wonder if you're the one losing it. But what you're dealing with isn't just a personality issue, it's a spiritual issue. And spiritual problems don't get solved with natural weapons. That's why God never asked you to carry it all. That's why he says, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, because he knows how to deal with what's been dealing with you. You're not called to fight every accusation. You're not called to chase every rumor. You're not called to match their energy. You're called to rest in the truth that God sees everything. Every conversation they twisted, every motive they questioned, every time they smiled in public and criticized you in private, every seed of doubt they planted in people's minds about you, God saw it all. And he didn't miss a single moment. The justice of heaven does not sleep. The hand of God is not slow. He knows the weight you've been under, and he knows exactly when to lift it. It might not happen the way you expect. God doesn't always confront the narcissist through a dramatic showdown. Sometimes he lets them talk just long enough to reveal their own heart. Sometimes he lets them dig the very pit they'll fall into, not because he's cruel, but because he's just. And in the meantime, he strengthens you. He restores your peace. He guards your heart. While the enemy is busy trying to destroy your reputation, God is building your character. While they're throwing arrows, he's raising up a shield. And what should have taken you out is actually building your endurance. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to fight to be believed. The people God assigns to your destiny will see the truth in due time. And the ones who don't, let them go. Because when God fights for you, he also filters your circle. He removes the ones who were only loyal to the version of you that served their agenda. He exposes who's with you and who was just with your image. That exposure might sting, but it's also a setup for your next level. Because when the battle belongs to God, the outcome always leads to your growth. So when the enemy comes in like a flood, when the accusations feel overwhelming, when the lies spread faster than the truth, when you feel backed into a corner, you don't have to swing wildly. You don't have to fall apart. You can lift your hands, not in surrender to the enemy, but in surrender to God. Because the battle you can't win is the one he never intended you to fight alone. He will contend with those who contend with you. He will handle what you can't. And when it's all said and done, the very thing that came to break you will become the reason you found out just how mighty your God really is. Pain has a way of making you feel forgotten. It whispers, that you're invisible, disposable, unworthy. When a narcissist tries to destroy you, they don't just hurt your heart, they target your identity, your confidence, your voice. They make you feel like your pain is pointless. Like all you're doing is surviving one attack after another while God stays silent. But God doesn't waste pain. What feels like the enemy trying to bury you is often God positioning you. What looks like destruction is actually construction. The very thing that was meant to take you out becomes the foundation He builds something on. Because with God, pain is never just pain, it's preparation, it's shaping you for a platform you didn't even know you were called to. You thought you were going through something random, but God was being intentional. Every sleepless night, every broken piece, every moment of isolation, He was using it to create something in you that couldn't be manufactured any other way. You tried to pray the pain away, and God said, I'm not just going to remove it, I'm going to redeem it. Because if He pulled you out too early, you'd miss the strength He was forming in the fire. You'd miss the clarity that only came when the noise stopped. You'd miss the authority that only comes after you've been through something and lived to tell it. There's something about surviving what should have destroyed you that gives your voice power. Real power, not platform-based popularity, not fake confidence that only works in public, but raw, unshakable, spirit-filled power that moves rooms and breaks chains. You didn't ask for the pain, but now that you've lived through it, you carry a depth you never had before. You have compassion for people others ignore. You have discernment that can see through fake smiles. You have authority because you've bled and healed and chosen to forgive anyway. And that's exactly what God uses. Not perfection, not polish, but pain that's been surrendered and transformed. The narcissists thought they were writing the final chapter in your story, but all they did was give God more material for the testimony. What they tried to use to silence you will become the reason you speak louder. What they meant to use for control will become the very thing God uses for calling. And when you start walking in it, when you start speaking out of the scars that once made you feel ashamed, people will see the glory, not the wound. They'll hear your story, and healing will start to break out in places where silence used to rule. Because when God uses your pain as a platform, it's not about you being seen. It's about Him being revealed. God doesn't wait until you have it all together to use you. He'll use you while the tears are still drying. He'll use you while you're still learning to trust again. He'll use you while you're rebuilding boundaries and relearning how to breathe without fear. Because what qualifies you in the kingdom isn't how clean your past looks. It's how surrendered your heart is. And when your pain becomes surrendered, it becomes seed. A seed that grows influence. A seed that multiplies purpose. A seed that reaches people you never could have reached if your life had stayed comfortable. So now you understand why the enemy fought you so hard. He wasn't just trying to hurt you. He was trying to silence the voice God was raising up in you. He was trying to bury the purpose your pain was unlocking. But it didn't work because you're still standing. You're still breathing. And now you don't just have a story, you have a stage. Not for ego, not for revenge, but for impact, for healing, for calling. Because with God, the pain doesn't define you, but it will launch you. It will become the very reason someone else believes they can survive too. There's something sacred about the moment